Hello everybody, just checking if we're all up and running. Looks like everything is good to me. Please pop a little note in the chat, a little comment in the chat if you can see me and if you can hear me. I'm aware that I'm off the side of the screen at the moment, but I'll be back in a second. Looks like we're all up and running to me. Ginia, thank you so much. You're always the first to let me know. Looks like we're good. Hello and welcome. So an interesting little session lined up for you today. There's a certain amount of uncertainty about how this session will go. So it's a little bit different for me as well. So in a nutshell, today, I'm going to be taking a colour block-in, which I started previously. Actually, funny enough, as part of a workshop, the last online workshop I did of rose painting. And then I'm going to almost destroy it in order to push it back to a point where I'm not feeling precious about it anymore and I can begin to rebuild it. But there's some method to this as well. So I'm going to describe what I'm doing as I do it, but I'm going to scrape it, I'm going to sand it, I'm going to put a glaze over it, I'm going to make it look like it's completely broken, and then I'm going to mend it. This is why there's some uncertainty in the session today. And the reason I think it's a good idea to do this is because the real world that we see and that we experience, that we feel, is way more visually complex than we can achieve with a highly finished, carefully done painting. So a lot of it is about adding texture to the surface, which gives it life. But it's also about painting not so much an exact visual impression, but perhaps going a little bit beyond that to create something which gets over the hurdle that we have with creating an image just with paint on a two-dimensional surface, which, if we're not careful, can look kind of bland, like it's lacking life. So I'm going to take you through at least how I go about trying to put some of that life back in, and I'm going to explain a little bit of what I'm doing along the way. But there's one point that I really need to make fairly strongly, I think, and I will be making it right the way through the session, is that there are reasons for everything that I do, that you're about to see me do. And all the time when I'm doing it, I'm thinking about what I've learned about light and color, because there are fundamentals to drawing, to color, to edge handling, which go to create a strong feeling of form. And to my way of thinking, at least, if you depart too far from those, then you lose something. So it's kind of a push and a pull between taking something a little further away from this kind of, let's face it, fairly dry and perhaps even insipid reference photo that we're working from, creating some more life and interest in it, and then realizing when that's gone too far from the visual impression, and then pulling it back again and creating some form. So there are strong fundamentals that you need to have, I think, if this is going to be successful. And if you ignore them, then you may find that the whole painting just falls off the cliff, okay, and becomes irretrievable. And that can happen too. So it's a kind of a push and pull process. Let me switch over to the main camera on the easel, and I'll show you what I've got set up at the moment. Wow, lots of people watching. We've got like over 100 people here today already. More coming. That's very exciting. So some of you may be wondering a little bit why, I mean, certainly those of you who are regulars on my workshops and courses are wondering why I don't often, or why I'm not sure that I ever really have taught this. And It's mostly because I worry that if I take too much emphasis off the fundamentals, and if people don't have a strong enough grasp of the fundamentals, that if you go too far into this stuff without that foundation, then it can all go very wrong very quickly, and it can become a very, very frustrating process painting something. But I think I've decided that painting is really about a marriage between those foundational skills, color mixing, understanding color and light, being able to draw shape well, edge handling, all of those things, and injecting something which is a little bit more personal into it as well. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So this here that I have, some of you will recognize this who were on the last workshop, which was about, we did a lot of rose, paintings of single roses, and it was all about the color. So this is kind of the block-in stage with a little bit of edge handling, but not very much. That's the reference photo it was done from on the right. And this is mainly about the color. So the color of this rose is mostly low chroma, except right in the center. And it goes from a deep orange on the inside out to close to neutral to a kind of almost like a purple, a red purple on the outside, but very low chroma, very little intensity to the color on the outside. So that color story I need to keep, because if I move too far from that, I will lose what makes this rose beautiful. But at the same time, I want to take this somewhere else. So I'm going to start with a fairly scary part of the process. Incidentally, I should tell you, this painting has already had 2 stages. So the first stage was an underpainting, which was done using the wipeout method. So it would have looked something like this, although with a little bit less texture at the start. This is one I've just started. So that's drying, ready for the next layer. And then this layer painted over the underpainting. So this here is a craft knife. You might call it an X-Acto knife, I suppose. And what I'm going to do now is, like, if I just went in from this point and started refining everything, you know, it might work nicely as a painting. At the same time, there's a real risk that it's going to become too carefully done, too finished, and it's going to lose a lot of life. So where I'm going to start, this is the bit where I jump off the cliff, as Kathy Speranza would say. And this is the part where I start to knock it back. So I'm going to be pretty ruthless with this. So the first thing I'm thinking about is edges. I want to put some texture on it, and I'm thinking about where the lights are, because I know that where these light edges come against the dark edges, I know there's some things I'm going to want to do with those edges to make them sing a little bit more. So I'm just going to start scraping it back. This is going to get, it's going to frighten you. It's going to get ugly. See this all over here. See, this is the light side of this cup shape on the inside of the rose. So this is where it comes over with the background. Over here is interesting because there's a very light bit here. That's interesting because as I'm scraping this back, I'm actually raising the value there as well, which is nice, because this would be quite light here. Some of today, I will probably lose myself in the decision-making process for a little while, and I may, more than I usually do, I may forget to talk. What I'm mostly doing at the moment, I mean, I'm scraping this almost right back to the panel. I know it's horrendous to watch. But what I am doing at the same time is I'm introducing texture. So there's a really, this edge here is really nice, very light there. I'm scraping this right back to the panel pretty much. I can almost use the end of this knife to draw a little bit as well. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the underlying forms and what's going to happen to the light. See, here I've got a very soft edge already happening. So I'm probably going to want to keep that, maybe obliterate that and just have this little bit here showing. This side is all very soft, so let's obliterate the side of the rose here. Oh, took a little nick out of it. That's an interesting place to take a nick out of it. I'm not really looking to create any forms particularly here. I'm kind of thinking it through, and I'm just creating some texture. Now in the background over here on the left-hand side, this is more in shadow, and on the right it's more in light. So I'm going to want more texture on the right. Because you see a lot more texture in the light than you do in the shadow. So this here is 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to use that to smooth out some of what I just did. I mean, it's by no, I'm not saying that you should necessarily do this to your paintings, but you can hopefully see, like, this is already starting to go somewhere else. It's getting a different kind of a feeling to it. It's becoming a little bit more diaphanous, and it's almost as if, to my eyes at least, now that there's a bit more texture in here, it's beginning to be perhaps a little bit more lifelike. It already feels a little bit more alive. Lisa says, scraping like this, does it compromise the primed surface? I guess it would if you went too deep into it. This is an ampersand universal primed. So it's got probably an acrylic-based primer underneath it. So I'm scraping it back to the primer. If I gouged right into the board underneath, I think that would possibly be a bit of a problem. So I'm not gouging it so much. Fingers, Jean says fingers on the chalkboard. Yeah, it is a little bit, isn't it? Brenda says, can that be done on canvas or just a panel? I think if you were going to do it on the canvas, you'd have to be a lot more gentle with it. You see, for me, the canvases that I work on have a thick oil prime on them anyway, so I can do it on that as well. So this is almost like, you know, I painted some detail, and then this is my softening brush, 400 grit sandpaper. And a bit more texture in the light. So I'm probably going to leave that there. I'm going to get a little bit of solvent. I use Terps for this. What I don't want is paint shavings on the surface now. So I'm going to get a bit of Terps, not really thick, on some kitchen roller and wipe that off so the surface is clean. Ready for the next thing that's going to happen. So the reason I use solvent for this is that it will evaporate off. It's starting to look kind of like an old wall painting or something. That's interesting. Jonathan says, try a number 10 scalpel blade. You have more control over your scraping, in my experience. Jonathan's an old hand at scraping painting. Do you do this, Jonathan? Do you scrape back before you paint on them? Suzanne says it's more ethereal now. I agree. Michelle says, I can destroy paintings without the aid of knives. Yeah, me too. Me too. And I should say that I don't always do this when I'm painting, you know, by any means. Sometimes I will and sometimes I won't. And sometimes I'm looking for a more expressive result, and sometimes I'm closer to realism. Like this is one that I finished a little while ago. This is obviously closer to realism. Most of the texture in there comes from the way the paint is put down. You know, some of you will probably have seen this one, which is the other end of the scale, the kind of thing that I'm doing today, where this has had exactly this treatment pretty much. Just finished that one yesterday. So, you know, I think it's a continuum, and you can decide for yourself where you are on that continuum, how much you want to do something like this. But I do think it's a really, really good idea to try and get away from trying to paint a perfect rendition of something if you want to get some kind of some expressiveness in there. I'm not at all saying that there's anything wrong with painting highly finished pieces, you know, where every inch of the surface is very carefully painted and controlled. You know, lots of painters work that way, and it can be really beautiful too. But if you're looking to get something a little bit more personal in there, then this might be a way that you can do it. So here I've got, in this little jar, I've got some medium, and it's just linseed oil, cold pressed linseed oil with a small amount of terps. And this is a makeup sponge. So I'm going to oil this out now, ready for painting on. This I always do when I'm doing more than one layer on a painting anyway. And these days I always do more than one layer on a painting. So I'm just going to put this over. You can see the values are coming back a little bit because it was a little bit sunken in. Make sure it's all covered. And what I generally do with this is kind of squeeze off the excess and then keep rubbing so that you end up with a very, very thin layer. You do not want loads of oil slopping about on the surface, or you won't be able to work into it at all. And it will never dry. But because it's so thin, you don't have to worry about yellowing. As long as you don't put it in a dark cupboard for 10 years or something, it'll probably be all right. I'm just going to let Banjo, my old cat, in because he's meowing. You coming in? Come on then. Come on then. No, he's just going to sit at the door and look at me. I think he wants me to come out. Kelly says, Paul, have you scraped and sanded a painting before, or is this your first time? No, I've been doing it for a long time, actually. I would say I'm probably doing it more lately. But I've gone through periods when I've really attacked them to get more, to try and get more expression into them, and times when I tend to work more finished. And honestly, I think I kind of, a lot of the time I yo-yo a little bit between the two. If I do something that looks very finished, I'm almost unsatisfied with it. And then I'll perhaps work on some very kind of more expressive pieces for a while, and then I'll feel that I've gone too far down that path, and then I'll pull back a little bit. You know, it's hard really to say that there's a definite approach, and part of this is just trying things and seeing what happens. Den says, how long did the oil painting dry before you can scrape away? Well, this one has been probably a month or two. I mean, as long as it's touch dry, it doesn't matter, you know. I mean, none of this stuff that I'm showing you at the moment is set in stone, apart from the stuff that I'm going to talk about colour, obviously. Which, you know, everybody knows I'm a bit of a stickler for colour. I mean, you could take I assume you could take a semi-wet one, and it would work all right. Michael says it reminds me of a sketch where you see the underdrawing. Yeah. So So the background, I'm thinking about the background now because I want to kind of establish some background before I begin working back into this. So I've already got a suggestion of it being darker over here and lighter over here. But one of the interesting things about light and shadow, this is a very neutral background. The local is very neutral, the local color, like independent of shadow or light. But there's more shadow on the left, and that means with a very low chroma color, when there's shadow on it, the chroma goes up a little bit. And in the light on this side, the chroma drops a little bit. So I'm going to have more chroma over here. I want to show you something that I've got on the palette now. Let's see if I can switch over to the palette. That didn't really work. I think I can sort it out. Yeah, it's just out of focus. I forgot to focus my palette cam. There we go. So I've got a bunch of color already worked out here. So what happens in this rose is it starts off in the middle, very low chroma in these kind of warm oranges. And then as you go up to the outside, it goes more blue-red and the chroma drops. So I've got some neutrals here. So I can drop the chroma, you know, as I go up. And this is more, over here, over this side is more blue-red. These are blue-reds. These are somewhere in the middle. And these are very orange. So the blue-reds, orange-reds, oranges, and neutrals of different values. And I can drop the chroma of all of these. These are all slightly different hues. I can drop the chroma of all of these with these near neutrals that I've got down here. But over here, I've been messing about already with some colors. So I've got green gold here. And I've got dioxazine purple. I don't actually know what I'm going to put in there, but these have quite the reason I've chosen them is because they're transparent. And they have, this is transparent red oxide. They have quite a lot of chroma at very low value. So I'm thinking about, I might be able to use some of that. Like if I just pick up some of, it's of indeterminate color really, I guess you could say, but it has chroma. It has quite a bit of chroma. So like over this side, I'm going to want a little bit more chroma. I know that already, so I'll put a little bit on. And when I get further over into the light, I want the chroma to drop and the value to come up. So I'm going to mix up. This is mostly ivory black and white I'm about to put on here with a little bit of raw umber, which actually I've run out of, so I'll put some raw umber out. So this is like a near neutral. The value is, it's probably about a 5, which might be a little bit high. Put a little bit more black in it. Let's just get some of this on a brush. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want the rose itself to be almost kind of emerging from the background. So I can, you know, I have a lot of freedom with what I do now. I'm going to put this on. Give me a general impression. You can see already a lot of the scrapes are getting covered. They're still there. The impression of them is still there. Let's get a little bit more where I'd like to have some more stuff happening in the background. So I'm adding chroma and lowering the value on the left, reducing chroma and raising the value on the right. So this is what I mean when I say, I mean, this isn't just random stuff I'm doing. I know that light works that way. With a local color, a very low chroma local color, that light will, in the shadows will have more chroma. And I know that these strong staining colors like dioxazine purple, green gold, they kind of can give that impression of depth. Where's my painting gone? Let's find the rose again. I'm going to wipe this back now. And it's getting a kind of to me anyway, it's getting almost a kind of a diaphanous quality to it already. Like it's a softness and emerging. It's kind of emerging from this. So the scrapes are still there. You can still see them coming through, but they're not as big a feature of it, if you like, as they were. So I'm looking for areas on the reference photo where I've got light. Need to sort out some drawing for some of these, paintings. And I'm trying to think through where I'm going to want my lightest values to be. So out here on the outside of the rose, this all wants to be very, very low chroma. Let's just soften some of this down a bit. So this is, I think this is a Rose Music Clips brush that one of my sons gave a haircut to with a pair of nail scissors. It's true, he did. He likes to experiment. Seriously, I think he would love this approach. He's only 9 now. At the moment, he's drawing warrior cats and patterns. I wouldn't say the high staining colours have gone into the scratches. No, it's kind of everything is floating over the top. So those scratches and scrapes are still there. You can kind of just, they're coming through a little bit. It's not like they're not deep enough into the surface, I don't think, to fill up with paint, you know. Yes, Kathy, right over the rose. Dan said, is this a technique you developed yourself or did you see someone else do it? That's a really good question. Well, I don't think scraping back paintings is anything new. You know, I can't think of anyone offhand who does it, but it's not new. I mean, you know, sometimes you scrape back a painting because you want to change something, and then maybe you think, well, actually, that I like the result. I like the feel of that. There's something nice about it. And glazing over a whole painting and then working back into it, that's not new either. I mean, lots of painters do that. So these are fairly standard methods. You know, it's just I'm using them to destroy the image is the wrong way to think about it. To begin to take it back so that I can come into it again from it, like a different kind of a place. But yeah, I mean, people use glazes to cover a whole painting quite a lot. But see, like this has all been, the background is kind of evened out now. So I'm going to begin to work into the rose. And the bit that I'm interested in the transition between these petals on the outside. They're very low chroma, almost neutral. They're papery thin. And the edges of these petals against this background, I think they're going to be really important for the painting, you know. I'll try to keep up with the comments, but oh my word, almost 150 people watching me destroy my painting. So I should tell you, for everybody who's watching, I don't know how this is going to go at this point. You know, I like it at the moment. I already like it more than I did, but I don't know what's going to happen now. DB says, Paul, could you please explain the differences in application of transparent versus opaque paint? Do you handle them differently? Yes and no. I mean, I would tend to generally use more opaque in the lights, but then lights will generally have a certain amount of white in anyway, so that tends to just happen by default. And I will tend to use staining transparent colors in the shadows if I can, like green gold, transparent red oxide. You know, eventually to get down to the bottom of the value range, you've got to use black if you want to get right down the bottom, and black is opaque. But yeah, generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, that's how I think about them. So I'm off the edge of the cliff now, sailing down, and I'm going to try and reach out and grab some supports and pull myself back. So what I'm thinking about now is these papery thin. I want to really to get that papery thinness across, and if I just paint them, it's not that likely that I'll get it. I mean, they're almost neutral out there. So I'm getting a little bit of, I'm not using my highest value yet, so I'm up to like a value 8. I'm keeping back the highest value. I've got, this is almost neutral grey with a tiny amount of like a purple pink in it. I kind of feel like this is going to matter a lot what I do now. I'm going to go in here. Moment of indecision. This is a flat synthetic brush. Sharp edge, you see. Really, really good for papery thin, kind of. See, the quality of the edge is quite important. They're quite, these direction changes on the outside edge are quite sharp. The lines aren't straight, but they're kind of almost brittle. So I want a hard edge on this side where it's against the light, and then soft here because this is yeah, I'm going to zone out now. I can feel it coming. Sorry if I do. So if I can, so talking about like giving it like a glow. So I've lost my black, just be a minute. I haven't got any more black on the palette. Here we go. So I'm thinking about that edge that I just put down. And if I want this edge to glow, I want two things from this edge. I want it to glow into the background, but I also want it to be hard. How am I going to do that? So if I mix a much lighter kind of a background, this is just black and white. I'm mixing up here on the palette. This is lead white I'm using, by the way. But if that's where the glow is going to be. Pull it up. Oh, I'm going to use a little bit of that light color. Let's think about where else I'm going to want. So I want this area here to kind of glow and have a lightness to it. Probably here as well. This is what I'm trying to set up. Is I'm probably not describing this very well. Is something that's going to be happening in the background behind those petals that I'm about to paint in. So I put that first one in, and then I thought, well, I want something to happen in the background behind it. So what I'm probably going to have to do is have that something happening in the background first, and then paint the petal over it again. Otherwise, I'm not going to get the glow. I'm not going to, sorry, not the glow. I'm not going to get the hard edge against the glow. So I've lightened the background. Now I'm going to try paint that. This is actually, when I teach, I'm pretty quick because there's a load of stuff to cover. But when I paint, I'm really, really slow. But even if I just get one part of the painting today to where I think it's nice, then hopefully that would be enough for it to be worth you coming. So it's a bit obvious, isn't it? This is, so I pushed and now I'm pulling. I think I overdid that and it looks a bit cheesy to me. And also I'm getting a line. I'm getting a line, dark light, dark light. I don't like that at all. So I suppose this is like a layer of light, almost it's hanging in. But if I go high enough value right on the edge here, I can still get a hard edge, but the glow is behind. In the background. Oh, I've been very rude and I haven't told you how long I'm planning to do this session for today. I guess partly because the answer is I don't really know. Maybe a couple of hours. Do you want to see, let me know actually, do you want to see the palette at the same time while I'm painting? Does it make a difference or not? Or would you rather see the reference photo like full size? What would you rather? I'm just thinking about that edge. Just 2 seconds. I'm just setting my screen up so I can see the comments as well because I couldn't previously. I don't want to get so lost that I stop talking to you. There is a definite danger of that though, I must be honest. Hello everybody who's just joining. Oh my word, we have over 150 people. I'm a little bit freaked out now doing experimental painting with 150 people watching. Well, experimental for me anyway. Everybody wants to see the palette. Okay, it's just going to take me a second to sort that out. We can have the palette on. The only way I can do that though is to make the reference photo smaller. I can't have it the same size. So I'm just making it a little bit smaller. The palette should appear now. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I might be able to switch between the two. We can see how it works, you know. Just thinking about how that looks. So what I'm wondering about now is whether I'm going to still be able to get that kind of hard-edged, papery consistency, kind of feeling of those outside petals, and that glow at the same time, or if I've got to sacrifice one for the other. I'm going to try painting that. So it's really, really close to neutral out here. On the outside of the rose. This is mostly raw umber and white that I'm putting in there. And you get these incredibly beautiful tiny edges where the petal just turns, just the edge of the petal turns towards the light. And they're responsible in a lot of ways for it looking kind of papery on the edge there. So this is just a synthetic round, fine synthetic round. Yeah, I mean, and there's just a really subtle sort of concertina, very close values, just along this surface of this petal. I think it's getting that. So I'm going to keep that outside edge hard and soften inside. And I'm letting the back, even though the value is wrong, I'm letting the background show through there. I like it. I think it's gonna help. And the nice thing about these synthetic flats is you can almost like sculpt petal shapes with them. So I'm just focusing on this one petal for now because I'm trying out some things, I suppose, and I'm seeing if they work. I'm going to have to admit, actually, at this point, it's going to be extremely difficult for me to keep up with the comments when I do this. Normally, I'm much clearer about what I'm doing, and I can divide my attention, but that's going to be hard today. So I want a feeling here. There's a feeling I'm looking for. I think it's coming. I want this to feel papery and thin. So I'm up at value 8 here, and I'm going from the purple blue, the blue red purple, whatever you call it, over to the neutral, and between the two, dropping the chroma right down. I can't tell you exactly what this chroma is, but I can tell you it's really, really low, probably lower than the chroma 1. It's very, very close to neutral. So I'm hoping that I've done enough with the background that as I paint these petals in, I'll get that papery thinness, but also the glow appearing to come behind them. And this is almost exactly what I did with that last rose. Hello, Kato. It's really good to see you. Is there a link to the reference photo? Oh, yes, I emailed it out, so you might not have had the email. No, there's a list that I started for people who wanted to come and see. I guess you might have just seen it on YouTube, but yeah, I mean, there is a link. If anybody's got it handy, could you stick the link to the reference photo in the chat, please? Kato, she would like to play. Oh, Donna says, I think you came up in recommendations suddenly because I've never seen your channel before tonight. Well, welcome, Donna. It's good to see you. This is what we do here. Actually, this isn't often what I do. What I normally do is do very structured teaching about colour and form. But today is a little bit different. And actually, I mean, a lot of this has come out of me. Let's drop the value a little bit. So the red-blue that I've got is, I've mixed it. See, I know what these colours are in this rose. And the way I tend to do this stuff, I would by no means say it is the only or the best or even a recommended way to paint, but it's the way that makes the most sense to me, is that I paint with very, very close to natural colour most of the time. Obviously, there are painters who do an absolutely beautiful job of painting with enhanced colour, let's say, higher chroma, more variation of the hues than is really there. It's not the way I paint generally. I like natural, very subtle colour. It's just an aesthetic choice. I have a feeling I have an unfinished thought hanging, and I was in the middle of saying something and I didn't finish it. Sorry if that's the case. So hopefully you can see like how slowly I'm working now, though. There's so much potential for this to go horribly wrong. But I just want to get this, like, where the form meets the background and how that's going to be handled. I want to get that resolved. I want to start carving these, like pulling the forms out, almost out of this very soft start. So probably going to have a hard edge there. Very beautiful petal form. Another thing is, like, you know, everyone who has been on a workshop with me or done a course with me knows that I stress. The phrase I usually use for it is a painter's perception. So you're looking to simplify the whole time. With this, the simplification job has already been done. It was done at the beginning, and the color has already been sorted. So what I'm interested in now is, you know, I'm going in a lot more slowly and a lot more detailed on these forms, because the foundation is already there. If you try to, I feel, this is something that I see a lot, and I try to help people avoid, is going into detail too soon. So this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about needing a strong foundation before you start to mess with stuff like this. So I can happily go into like a lot more detail here on these forms, and and know that I'm not likely to lose it, because obviously on the palette I've got all the colors pretty much anyway. See, I know that right in the middle, if I want to see how these colors out here are going to work against this deep soft center. You see, I think part of the story of this rose, as well as the light, so you've got the deep oranges in the middle in the shadow going out to very low chroma, blue reds on the outside, almost neutral, thin papery forms, and also in here is a kind of a softness, different kind of forms in here. If I want to see, how they work against each other, I could bring in some of the color that I know I'm going to want in there, where there's much higher chroma, like right in the middle here, and the value goes a lot lower. So sometimes it can be good to have a visual reference of how, otherwise there's a of how these areas relate. Otherwise I might end up getting really involved out here and not having anything that works with the middle properly. Just put some of the higher chroma in the shadow area so I can see straight away how that's going to work. It's all soft edges and blurry in here because that's all shadow. It's an ethereal rose at the moment. Hello, Romy. Don't worry, there's no light. It's just a painting session. Cosmo, you're very welcome. I don't know if anybody's painting along, because I shouldn't think so today. But quite a lot of the people who were here will have been on my last workshop, where we did do the first stage of this rose, but that was just about color. So this is kind of where you can go next. I'm aware that I'm spending a lot of time not actually painting, but I have to think about everything I do carefully when I'm doing this, or I will mess something up. Treasure says, have you ever painted sunflowers? Do you know what? I don't think I have. Have you seen Katie Ripple's sunflowers? I mean, how can anyone paint sunflowers after watching her do it? After seeing her do it? I just wouldn't even attempt it. They're just so amazing. Everything she paints is amazing. She's actually a really good example of someone who paints in a very, as I was saying before, very kind of finished, highly realized form. But really beautiful work. And then you've got another painter I'm a big fan of, Alex Kelly, who paints also very beautiful work with what I generally would think of as enhanced color, quite high chroma, a lot of chroma Q variation. But it works beautifully. I've got to be careful not to try and bang anything in quickly. I've got to be, it's slow, this process. I want to just slowly pull this rose out without trying to bang it out too quickly. There's something really interesting happening down here. There's a purple shadow. It's the only purple shadow in the whole rose. And it also gives me an opportunity to, I think this petal here is quite important to the form. And I want it to have a hard edge. Is that too dark? Uh-oh. My tummy's starting to rumble. Should have eaten something, forgot to eat again today. So I'm going to make this darker than it really is. When it comes up here, it's very dark indeed. The reason I'm interested in this bit here is because it's going to show this petal here, but it's also, it gets very dark there. Quinacridone rose, ivory black. And I don't know, there's something interesting about this against the background. So I want the background to be slightly lighter. So I'm going to take this edge in further than I want it to, so I can paint this petal over it. And then the background should go just a little bit lighter behind this. Just enough to show it. And then she appears down here. Oh, there's a lovely little light tick right on the bottom of that petal. I'm going to put a hard edge in here and see how it goes. Give it a little bit of chroma actually. Just a little. I'm trying to think of the quality of this edge, like I'm trying to get the little permutations of the edge. That's got some light, right? Because everything else is so muted. I only put a tiny bit of chroma in there, but it's like bang. I'm going to give it a little bit more chroma than it's really got there, I think. Just a tiny bit. Oh, that's nice. Get some shadow in. So I'm working up to this area here, this form. I'm trying to think in two ways at once. I'm trying to think about the shapes as abstract shapes and get them accurate, and I'm trying to think about the texture and the form of the petal at the same time. That's a really beautiful part of the rose. So and I'm usually using two brushes most of the time, one for shadow and one for light. So this area, so some parts of the painting I will try and get really, really close, like make it look really, like you could reach out and touch it. Other parts, you know, I want to just kind of disappear. And I think a lot of the expression comes from that. So it's like it goes back to this idea of the push and pull, having enough there that convinces your brain that there is a real form with light and shadow, overlapping forms, and then at the same time destroying parts of it. It's because I think it has something to do with the way we see, because when we look at the world, we don't see the whole thing at once. And this is something that I think photography has fooled us into thinking that we do, is that we can see the whole thing at once. We see all the detail everywhere, and we really, really don't. What we do is our eyes dart about the scene. They take little notes of particular areas, and then our brains make up the rest. That's why optical illusions work. And I feel personally, for me, a kind of painting that perhaps reflects that process in some way
I have a theory that may be
what gives this kind of way of painting things a little more life.
That kind of tension between some areas which are very carefully painted and draw your eye and you look at those, and some areas which are vague and indistinct, but your brain can make up what's there. And I also wonder if it isn't partly that they're more involving in some way to look at paintings that have very vague areas, because your brain is required to do more. Maybe. Who knows? Right, I'm going up the value range a little bit because I want this bit to stand out. There's this bit here. It's a very interesting edge, this, because this petal here is creased. And there's a lot of detail in this edge. Not necessary to paint it, but if I can get it in, I have a feeling it might be really, really beautiful to paint. So having lower values up here means these ones, now I'm going right up the value range, only a step, but it's standing out more what I'm doing here, you know? Let's try and get these forms in right. Sorry, I know I'm not keeping up with messages. I will stop in a second. But this is where I've been trying to work up to, is getting this form in here, because I think it's kind of, I think it's quite important. I want to see some of this higher value here too, though. Let's balance that a bit. And just a little bit here. I'm going to go down the values just a little bit with this area of this petal. Soft edge on the inside, hard edge on the outside. And that will show that it's kind of coming out. I think I have a feeling, you know, I'm liking where this painting is going. I have a feeling that I'm probably going to do another session on it after this one. And maybe stream it too if you would like. And this bit here, I kind of feel like I want that to be incredibly finely painted and really to look astonishingly realistic. And then some areas to be just drift off. Disappear. Hello, Mariana. Good to see you. Mariana says, this is reminding me of one of Kathleen's ghost flower paintings. Yeah. I'm not a bit surprised. I'm a big fan of Kathleen, both as a painter and as a human being. And looking at her work over the last few years has undoubtedly changed the way I paint. Hopefully for the better. So the shadows out here on the outside are almost grey, really, really low chroma. The flower is really neutral out here, but then you get these deep areas of more shadow. That's slightly reddish, I think. Reddish. Let's give it a bit of chroma. And the nice thing about painting into the oil layer is that everything can be softened. If you paint alla prima onto a dry surface, in order to soften an edge, you need wet paint next to it. But when if you're painting like this, you don't. If you're painting into an oil layer, then drop the chroma as we come out of the shadow. Everything can be softened. So this bit here, I think, is a bit I'm going to come into on another session to see how finely I can paint it. I'm going to have like a light all down here.
Yeah, flake white and lead white are basically the same thing. They're slightly different process, but pigment is the same. Donna says, I'd find that wall in the middle a huge challenge. Yeah, it is, yeah. It looks rather organized, and if it wasn't a photo, it would be hard to believe. Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, if you try and paint, I think anyway, if you try and paint every individual little bit of those walls, there's a really good chance that you're going to spoil it, that it's not going to work. So there's a really fascinating thing that Fantin Latour does a lot when he paints the inside of roses like that. I'm going to try and do a little bit of it shortly. I just want to get this. That's so beautiful, that bit there. Just comes. The value changes are so subtle, the values are really close. There. So that's maybe an example of what I'm trying to say when I say, like, I like to have, I think it really works well if some parts are very carefully painted and quite realistic, and other parts are almost, disappearing into nothing. I think, I would guardedly say I'm fairly happy with the way it's looking at the moment. Something's bothering me around here that needs sorting out, but
It's though the outside petals are starting to get that kind of papery feeling. I think I've just gone too dark on that shadow. I went darker to try and make it show, but I think I've gone too dark. Couldn't be that dark. But that means I'm going to have to lighten the background even more there. Yeah, it's just too dark. You can push things a bit, but if you push them too far, it doesn't work. It doesn't look right. This is a dry brush, has no paint on it at all. It's a Winsor & Newton Scepter Gold, very soft, good for blending. You see, I think the colours are really subtle in this rose, and I think, to me, to my way of painting and my way of thinking about painting, like I'm really interested in getting this fine difference between these warm oranges in here and then the cool, close to neutral red, blue-red out here. You know, I find that really, really beautiful, and that's a lot of what interests me about this rose, is the way that colour moves. And as I was saying, it doesn't. I certainly would never say that is the way to paint. Lots of different ways to approach things, but it means a lot to me. You know, for me that colour is beautiful enough. It doesn't need playing with, at least on the paintings that I do. You know, I'm quite happy for it to be like that. I'm creeping up on the middle. I think the outside is kind of figured out enough that I think that's probably going to work. But I'm wondering now about that middle. Yep, you're probably right, Susan. Habit of years hard to break. So I kind of feel like this little microcosm area of this rose is quite important to the overall value balance of the painting, because I need to have this like very light, but with close values that can show some undulation of this. It goes into deep chroma there, and then out to the same value, but low chroma and a different hue here. And then this has to be light enough to show that as being just slightly darker. It's not exactly the same as it is in the photo. You know, I'm changing it a little bit. And I wouldn't say this is so much expression, but it's about the form. An area where I want to show the form, and then let's try. Don't want to do this, but and then I can bring that edge back later if I want to. Yeah.
So let me show you something. I'm gonna do a little bit of messing about now. This will work or it won't, basically. I've tried this a few times. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm talking about that central area of the rose. What I don't want to do is attempt to paint every little wall. I want to find a way to kind of to create a kind of a texture in there that suggests it and is going to be perhaps even a little bit more convincing than if I actually painted it all. So I know that I've got the right colours for it already here. It goes from this deep oranges and reds up to slightly lighter as we go up on the edge on the right hand side of the centre of the cup of the rose. It goes lower chroma into the light. So basically it does this. So a lot of it is about making sure that I get the right colour in the right place and also trying to create some of that texture. So, you know, say if it was on the outside, I've got near neutral, like a really high value there. This is like a value 6. And if I just kind of don't properly mix those colours, but I have to mix some more of that, kind of run them into each other a little bit. So the paint isn't really mixed. And rather than carefully trying to paint it, kind of roll it on. But I'm also trying to keep this generally like changing it as it goes to where the lights and the shadows are. And then like up here, there's going to be some darker. So I'm mixing some of the darker colors now. Not mixing together. I mean, they're what would I get there? Too low chroma. And then I will probably go in. Once I've done some of this and soften it all. So I'm trying to paint it by rolling the brush to sort of suggest a texture that isn't there. Hopefully mean that I can avoid trying to overpaint this bit and failing. I'm trying to paint every little. It'll probably take a few times over to, you know, if I can apply the paint in a way that's going to suggest the form without actually trying to paint every individual little form and paint some areas more carefully, then I think I might have a chance of creating something which is more convincing, perhaps, than if I try to paint. So where I see something happening, I can try and eke out a little bit of light and shadow out of it without getting too precious about it being perfectly painted. Perhaps. Should really have a close-up camera. This bit is gorgeous. See, there's shadows here on the inside of the rose. And then there's a shadow on the outside here, and it's grey. It's just neutral. It's like, I just find colour changes like that so beautiful. There's a dark shadow here, which is just a neutral. And then another shadow right next to it, which has all of that chroma. I find that fascinating. I'm like, I want to know why, you know, why. And it basically comes down to the local colour of the petals, how fast here the local colour drops off from the inside to the outside.
So there's a little bit of that in there now. Let's see what happens if I soften that. I need something very soft. All right, this is my favorite softening brush. It's not a very precise tool. It's a goat's hair flogger. Because that paint is quite thick, and if I go in with a brush with any kind of a spring to it, then I'm just going to destroy it. I think even that was too strong. But when it goes here into the shadow, then I'll soften it right away. Maybe this will work. And again, it's like the color is interesting because where it comes out of the shadow, the chroma drops. Where it goes into the shadow, the chroma goes up quite a way. So on the palette here, I've got like, I can put down, like here, I can put down really low chroma. This is too light. Slightly light a bit, and then go across just behind it for a shadow that has more chroma. And hopefully I can gradually, oh, didn't mean to do that. Slowly, that's wrong there. Build this up. By putting the colors in, putting the forms in, softening them, and probably pretty much doing what I'm doing in the rest of the painting, like some parts of it just bring out and paint very carefully, and other parts allow them to pretty much disappear into softness and vagueness. It's really, really low value right there in the middle. So this is quinacridone rose. Transparent red oxide. I'm going to have to put some black in to get the value down, which is going to make it a little bit more opaque and drop the chroma, but I don't see how I can avoid it. I just want to see like that really dark value in there. Would create more depth. Donna says, my nerves would be shot if you had a close-up camera. I'm holding my breath as it is. This says, is there a materials list, especially for the brushes you use? No, I mean, not for this. I mean, this is just kind of me painting and hopefully trying to share something interesting about what I'm doing. But I can tell you, I mean, the brushes that I'm using are, there's a variety of them, mostly synthetic flats. I'm using quite a lot of Rosemary's Eclipse, Angled Eclipse, and Winsor & Newton Scepter Gold Series 606, I think it is. They call it the long stroke or something. But there's no reason why I couldn't. I don't know if you're subscribed to my email list, like there's a bunch of people are here because they got an email about this session, and those people, yes, I mean, certainly I can send the materials list to you. I don't know if you're on that list. You see, down here, the values get a lot lower, but still you get that same pattern of low chroma in the lights, close to neutral, and then higher chroma in the shadows. It's just that it all happens within much narrower value range, because we're in the shadow. And the other thing I'm going to want to do is to soften all of that, because that's all in shadow. That's too dark now, isn't it? It's not really helping anything at all. So what I'm probably going to do with these bits in here that I'm painting now is knock it all back, the edges, and then selectively paint back into it again on another session and bring a little bit more. But if it kind of works when I'm squinting, then I'm guardedly happy about it. Again, here as we come out, the chroma drops off a cliff. It just goes to nothing so fast. I feel like this is going to need some form painting in it as well. Kind of tempted to put a little bit of the leaves in just to see how that's going to affect everything. I'm in two minds with this one actually, whether to put leaves in or not, or just completely ignore them and just paint this flower. And also beginning to wonder if I might be putting it too far back towards like a carefully painted rose. But hopefully you'll agree that it's got a kind of what I'm hoping for is a kind of a smoky, ethereal feeling to the light. You know, I'm very interested in getting the colour right because I'm very interested in the light. To me, it's all about the light. And the light is, I see it almost as a metaphorical. You know, as this process is metaphorical in a way. Actually, I posted the rose that I painted yesterday, that pink peony, on Instagram. I had a little reel of that rose, put it up, and someone said something about, I'd said something about something needs to be broken sometimes to bring it back again. And someone had said something about, yeah, life can be like that too. And, you know, for me personally, I've got direct experience of that, getting extremely ill 6 years ago, losing our house, We'd been paying off the mortgage for 15 years. Couldn't work. Chucked everything in the car and moved out here to the countryside, and probably one of the best things that ever happened to us, frankly. Our whole life had to be broken before this one could happen. And there's something about the light that I've always felt is, you know, we live by metaphors. There's a really good book. Actually, it's not a really good book. It's a good book, but it's incredibly difficult to read, called Metaphors We Live By. And for me, I have to say, light has a strong metaphorical meaning for me. And if the light isn't there, then, you know, in the painting, then I would rather have not have bothered at all. And personally, I feel I get closer to it when my colour is what's the right word? Close to natural colour. Yeah, so if you like the look of this process, I suspect it would be slightly different for everybody, but I am teaching a workshop very soon, which will delve into this way of painting where you have a very strong foundation built on colour and form, story of the light, really, and then bring in more expressive and personal quality to the paint. It's going to be, when's it starting? A couple of weeks, I think. Kind of feeling like I'm getting that itchy feeling like I need to think about stopping soon, so I can, like, I've gone quite a long way, and if I go much further, I feel like I need to be a little bit careful and possibly sit and have a look. But I want to see what the green of the leaves is going to look like and decide if it's going to go in there or not. So I use way I mix my greens, because I want chroma very low down the value range. So I use, this is arylide yellow. It's like Hansa yellow is arylide as well. That's phthalo green. I mean, it makes like a lurid kind of a green. I mean, you don't want that in your painting, right? Well, unless you like that kind of thing. But then with black, brings the chroma right down, brings the value right down, and you get quite a strong chroma, very low value blue-green, which is really, really beautiful. These kind of leaves. I want to see this very low value. I've got something unfortunate happening here. I think that's something I just did. So where is there a dark shape? Would be one here. Let's see. Interestingly, the leaves, on the photograph, the leaves are really out of focus because I had the focal depth set so short. Is that the right phrase, focal depth? I think it is. I think I'm going to want the leaves. Definitely going to want the leaves. We give it something, I think. But I'm not going to put that pot in. They're sitting in a pot. The rose is sitting in the pot. The pot is definitely not coming along for the ride. Okay, I'm just going to kind of sketch these in for now so I can think about what to do with them later. Just put them in these kind of abstract shapes at the moment. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of keeping up with the comments today. I kind of knew this was going to happen, though. I'm sorry. I'm normally a lot more responsive, but I find it quite hard to do this and talk at the same time. No, that's interesting because there's a leaf comes up against this petal that I'm so interested in here. So if I do it slightly darker than it really is, then I can show a little bit of the form of that leaf there. Petal, I mean, sorry. And that petal is. I'm sure I've been really incoherent today. I'm going to make a point of not watching this video back just in case. I'm going to leave this painting here for now because I feel a strong need to have a look at it and see what it might need. I think this is a nice sort of second stage, or third stage, I suppose. And then I'll let this dry and maybe work on it some more, probably just some fine details. But I feel like I want to resolve some of this. It's kind of working, but I want to resolve just some little areas around there a little bit. I think could do with some little bit of attention. So hopefully, if you've taken anything from this, it's that if you get too precious about a painting, you can actually lose something in the process. And that sometimes just by kind of being perhaps a little bit brave with it and just got to have this lower value in here to show this. It's going to be so nice. Kind of creating a lot more texture and a lot more light, a lot more life, whilst at the same time doing it in a way which is rooted in what's actually happening with the forms and the light. You can end up with something which is hopefully a little bit more interesting than just a straight copy of the photo. In terms of the color and the forms, it is quite close to the photo, but hopefully this has something of something else, like I don't know, slightly metaphorical edge to it or something like that. A bit of life, a bit more life, perhaps. I hope. Margaret says, let me catch up on a few things. What's the small brush you painted the centre with? That, I think, is also a Rosemary's brush. I think it's, funny enough, I think they call it the botanical set. But there's nothing special about it. It's just a synthetic round. I have a bunch of them.
But any synthetic round will do. Synthetic's easy to make. They're all pretty good. The olive green paint was Michael Harding Green Gold. Yeah, I don't know if it's series 2 or 1. I can't remember. The red that I've got on here, Kelly, is quinacridone rose, which is my go-to red. Above it is permanent orange, which I don't think I've actually really used in this painting, but I had it out anyway. I don't use cadmiums at all, and I never use alizarin. Donna says there's a Louis MacNeice poem called Snow you might enjoy. Thank you. I'll look it up. I like the sound of that. Is the workshop via the live streams or through a website? Oh, it's all live stream. So the way I usually do them is, like, this one is a 7-week one because I think we're going to have quite a bit to cover. We're going to paint a bouquet of roses, but they are all peony pinks. This kind of rose, using this approach. So it's built up carefully in stages. Get the foundation right, go into the color story and figure out how to mix the colors right and get that right, and then take it further, a little bit further, to begin to bring some expression out of it. So the way I always run my workshops are the same. We have a live session once a week. I supply some additional video, and there's like a private group on my online community site. I used to do them as Facebook groups, but I don't like Facebook much. So we've got it's called a Circle, I think the platform is called. It's really nice. I mean, it looks like Facebook, so it's easy to use. It's just better because it's not Facebook. No ads or anything like that. That's basically how they work, how the workshops work. But listen, if you go over to my website, if you put my name into Google, if you want to hear about it when it's coming up, if you go over to my website, it's called Learning to See. And if you put my name, Paul Foxton, into Google, you will find it. And then on there is a link to subscribe. So if you subscribe to the email list there, then you'll hear about the workshop. Actually, I've probably got something I can stick in the chat. I'm terrible at this. Let me have a look. I'll probably stick a link in there that will give you some idea, and you can, this is my courses site, and if you want to, you can create an account there without actually signing up for anything. So this is the workshop. There's a link. And we're going to do this. I mean, I've never taught this kind of approach before. Normally, I very strongly stress the fundamentals, and there still will be in this workshop. But I'm also, and basically, I asked a lot of people, my email list of people who've done workshops with me before, do you want this? Do you want me to spend some time with you, taking you through how to make something more than a copy of the reference photo? And the response was astonishing, frankly. Everyone said, yes, please. So, in very strong terms. There's a value mistake here. God, value mistakes just wind me up. I'm actually having trouble putting the brushes down, I must admit. I know I should stop here. I know I should. And what I'll do when I come back to this is I may even destroy again some of what I've already painted here. If there's any of it that isn't quite what I want, I don't think is good enough, then I'll sand it back again and paint over it again. Maybe not this one, because I'm pretty happy with it as it is at the moment. But you never know what tomorrow will bring. I may decide tomorrow that it needs reworking, so we'll see. We'll have to see. Sorry, let me answer a few more, see if there's any questions or anything. Susan, so good to see you. I'm really sorry I haven't been in touch. I will get in touch with you very soon. I'm just crazy busy at the moment. I'm sorry. Thank you, Christine. That's a very nice thing to say. No, it's not cad orange, permanent orange. The orangey red is permanent orange. It's the highest chroma you can get at that value in a red orange. It's insane. Lurid. If you need the highest possible chroma, like red oranges, you go with that and then put something like naphthol with it and it's just off the charts, you know. Leave it alone, you'll ruin it, said Jonathan. I promise you, I will not leave this alone. It is not finished yet. I'm going to go back into it some more. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know it hasn't finished its journey yet. So some more stuff will happen. I mean, you can leave them at any point, can't you, really, and decide that that's it, it's done. But this one is not done yet. Anyway, listen, thank you so much, everybody, for coming along. If you want to hear about the workshop and you're not already on my email list, just put my name into Google and you find me. Subscribe to my email list and then you'll hear about it. Starts in a couple of weeks. Might be back on this painting next week. Probably going to do another live stream next week. One of the main things I want to do is resolve some of these forms. Not too much, just here and there. Like all of this area, that's really lovely and I haven't done it yet. All of this, I haven't done the transition. I've done the inside and the outside, but I haven't done the transition in between. So that all needs to be done. You know, the painting's far from finished. But I think most of it is established, and I would guardedly say that this time, when I jumped off the cliff, had a reasonably soft landing. Seems to have worked out all right. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.